78-year-old Evelyn Sterling adjusted the silk scarf around her neck, watching the iron gates of Silver Meadows' assisted living roll shut behind the Bentley. The sound of the locking mechanism was heavy, final, and oddly reminiscent of a prison cell door she had once seen in a movie. Beside her in the back seat, her son Richard was tapping furiously on his phone, sweating through his expensive Italian suit. Her daughter, Caroline, was checking her makeup in a compact mirror, refusing to make eye contact. "It's just for a few weeks, Mother," Richard muttered, not looking up. "Just until the renovations on the estate are finished. You know how the dust aggravates your asthma." Evelyn tightened her grip on her cane. The handle was solid ivory, carved in the shape of a lioness's head. It was heavy enough to crack a skull, a fact she found herself contemplating with increasing frequency. "There are no renovations, Richard," she said, her voice sharp and clear, betraying none of the senility they constantly accused her of. "I fired the contractors last week, and I certainly didn't agree to a vacation in a facility that looks like a minimum security penitentiary for geriatric tax evaders." The car stopped. The doors were pulled open by orderlies in crisp white uniforms, who looked more like bouncers than caregivers. "Out we get, Mrs. Sterling," one of them said, grabbing her arm with a grip that was firm to the point of bruising. "Don't touch me," Evelyn snapped, pulling away. She stepped out, smoothing her Chanel skirt. She looked at the building. It was sterile, imposing, and cold. "We love you, Mom," Caroline chirped from the car, finally looking at her. It was the smile of a shark sensing blood in the water. "Sign the papers with Dr. Moreland and we'll visit on Sunday." "Papers?" Evelyn froze. "What papers?" But the Bentley was already moving. Richard slammed the door, and the driver gunned the engine. Evelyn watched as her own car, paid for with the empire she had built from scratch 50 years ago, sped away, leaving her standing on the concrete with a suitcase she hadn't packed. "Right this way, Evelyn," a voice oiled with false sympathy said. Dr. Moreland stood in the doorway. He was a tall man, with a smile that didn't reach his dead, gray eyes. "I am leaving," Evelyn announced, turning back to the gate. "Call me a taxi." "I'm afraid that's not possible," Moreland said softly. Two orderlies stepped in front of her, blocking the path. "Your children have activated your power of attorney, Evelyn." They cited rapid cognitive decline and financial incompetence. "You are a ward of the state now, and a resident of Silver Meadows." Evelyn swung her cane. She aimed for Moreland's kneecap. She was fast, but the orderly was faster. He caught the cane, wrenched it from her grasp, and tossed it onto the grass. "Sedation," Moreland ordered calmly. Evelyn felt a sharp prick in her upper arm. The world tilted, on its axis. Her knees gave way. As the darkness rushed in to swallow her, she heard Moreland speaking into a radio. "Package secured. Tell Richard the transfer can proceed. Empty the accounts." Evelyn tried to scream, to tell them they had messed with the wrong grandmother. But her tongue was heavy lead. The last thing she saw was the gray sky spinning above her, mocking her defeat. Evelyn woke up to the smell of bleach and boiled cabbage. She was lying in a twin bed with railings, dressed in a scratchy cotton gown that smelled of industrial detergent. She sat up, her head throbbing as if she had gone 10 rounds with a heavyweight boxer. She looked around. The room was small. Cinder block walls painted a depressing shade of beige. There was a single window, but it was barred on the outside. "You're awake." "Good. You were snoring like a chainsaw." Evelyn jumped. In the other bed across the room sat a woman. She was tiny, withered, and hooked up to an oxygen tank, but her eyes were bright and fierce. She was knitting something that looked suspiciously like a noose. "Who are you?" Evelyn rasped, her throat dry. "I'm Margaret," the woman wheezed. "Welcome to Hell's waiting room, or as they call it, the memory care unit." "I don't have memory problems," Evelyn snapped, swinging her legs off the bed. "I run a Fortune 500 logistics company. Or I did until yesterday." "We were all something yesterday, honey," Margaret cackled. "I was a structural engineer. The guy in room 4B was a judge. Now, we're just ATM machines." Evelyn stood up, her legs shaky. She went to the door. Locked. No handle on the inside. Just a keypad. "Don't bother," Margaret said, clicking her knitting needles. "Code changes every shift, and even if you get out, The hallways have pressure sensors. Moreland runs this place like a black site. Evelyn paced the small room. Her mind was clearing, the sedative wearing off. Richard and Caroline. They had planned this. The renovations, the distraction with the new accountant, the sudden drive. They wanted the liquidity. They wanted the Cayman accounts. But they made a mistake. They assumed Evelyn kept her passwords in a notebook like a normal old lady. "I need a phone," Evelyn said, turning to Margaret. "I need to call my lawyer, Saul. He's the only one Richard can't buy." "Phones are contraband," Margaret said. "They strip search you on entry. If you want to make a call, you have to earn it." "Earn it? How?" "There's a smuggle route," Margaret whispered, leaning forward. "The janitor, Henderson. He trades favors for cigarettes and cash. But you don't have cash. They took your purse." Evelyn touched her ears. Her diamond studs were gone. Her wedding ring was gone. She checked her mouth. "I have a gold tooth," Evelyn said grimly. "Think that buys me 5 minutes?" Margaret grinned, revealing mostly gums. "Honey, for a gold tooth, Henderson will let you make a call to the president. But you have to get to the boiler room. That's his office. And getting there means getting past Nurse Grady." Suddenly, the door beeped and swung open. A massive woman with arms like tree trunks stood there, holding a tray of colorful pills. "Medication time, Evelyn," Nurse Grady boomed. "Open up." Evelyn looked at the pills. Blue, red, white. Sedatives, antipsychotics, compliance drugs. "I'm not taking those," Evelyn said, standing tall. "Dr. Moreland says you have to." Grady smiled, stepping into the room. 2 orderlies appeared behind her. "We can do this the easy way, or the tube way." Evelyn looked at the pills, then at the open door. She realized fighting physically was a losing battle. She had to fight smart. "Fine," Evelyn said, feigning defeat. She took the pills. She put them in her mouth. She took a sip of water. She swallowed loud and hard. "Good girl," Grady smirked, checking her mouth with a flashlight. Evelyn lifted her tongue. Empty. As soon as the door locked again, Evelyn retched, spitting the pills she had hidden in her cheek into the trash can. "Sleight of hand," Evelyn whispered, wiping her mouth. "Learned it in Vegas in '68. Margaret clapped slowly. "Okay, CEO, let's get you to the boiler room." The plan was simple, reckless, and dangerous, just the way Evelyn liked it. At 2 p.m., the residents were herded into the recreation room for mandatory bingo. It was the only time the hallway to the service elevators was unguarded for exactly 3 minutes, while the shift change occurred at the nurse's station. Evelyn sat at the bingo table, her skin crawling, as Richard's voice echoed in her memory. "Just for a few weeks, Mother." He was probably drinking her vintage scotch right now, toasting to his inheritance. "B14, the announcer droned. "Bingo!" Margaret screamed, standing up and throwing her cards in the air. She clutched her chest, wheezing dramatically. "Oh, the big one! It's the big one!" Chaos erupted. The orderly guarding the door rushed over. "Margaret, sit down. Someone get the oxygen." In the confusion, Evelyn slipped out the side door. She moved fast for 78, her slippers silent on the linoleum. She counted the seconds in her head. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. She reached the service corridor. It was dark, smelling of wet mops. She found the elevator and pressed the button. Nothing. Keycard access only. "Damn it," she hissed. "Looking for a ride?" Evelyn spun around. Standing in the shadows was an old man in a wheelchair. He was missing a leg, and he wore an eye patch. "I'm looking for the boiler room," Evelyn said, eyeing him warily. "The general," the man saluted. "Margaret signaled me. You're the new blood, the one with the gold tooth. Do you have a key card?" "Better." The general grinned. He pulled a powerful magnet from his lap blanket. He slapped it against the elevator control panel and slid it down in a specific pattern. The circuitry inside clicked. The doors groaned open. "Old tech?" The general shrugged. "Works every time. Henderson is down there. Don't let him stiff you on the price." Evelyn nodded her thanks and stepped in. The doors closed, plunging her into darkness as the car descended. The boiler room was a humid, noisy cavern of pipes and steam. Henderson sat at a small desk in the corner, reading a comic book. He was a scrawny man with shifty eyes. "I don't allow residents down here," Henderson said without looking up. "Get out before I call Grady." "I want to make a call," Evelyn said, stepping into the light. Henderson looked up. "You got nothing I want, lady. They stripped you clean." Evelyn reached into her mouth. She didn't pull out a tooth, she couldn't. It was implanted. But she reached into the hem of her gown, where she had hidden a small metallic object she had found loose in the bed frame earlier. It wasn't gold. It was a sharp, rusted screw. She wasn't here to trade. She was here to negotiate. She moved with terrifying speed, slamming the screw onto the desk, right next to Henderson's hand. "I don't have my gold," Evelyn hissed, her face inches from his. "But I have a promise. My son is liquidating a $1 billion estate. If you let me make this call, I will give you $1 million cash when I get out. If you don't, I will tell Dr. Moreland you've been selling painkillers to the junkies in the alley." Henderson froze. He looked at the screw. He looked at the fire in the old woman's eyes. Greed warred with fear. "$1 million?" Henderson squeaked. "Tax-free." Evelyn lied smoothly. Henderson reached into his drawer and pulled out a burner phone. "Make it quick, you have 2 minutes." Evelyn grabbed the phone. Her hand shook as she dialed Saul's private number. Ring, ring, ring. "Weinstein Law?" A gruff voice answered. "Saul, it's Evelyn. Listen to me. Richard has—" "Evelyn?" Saul's voice changed. It sounded cold, distant. "Evelyn, where are you?" "Richard said you had a stroke. He said you were nonverbal." "He lied. I'm in a prison, Saul. Silver Meadows. You have to stop the sale, freeze the assets." There was a long pause on the line. "I can't do that, Evelyn," Saul said softly. "What do you mean? You're my attorney." "Not anymore," Saul said. "Richard showed me the new medical evaluations, signed by 3 doctors. You've been declared incompetent, Evelyn. I answer to your power of attorney now. I answer to Richard." "Saul, don't you do this," Evelyn screamed. "I'm sorry, Evelyn. It's already done. The company was sold this morning. The house is on the market tomorrow." Click. The line went dead. Evelyn stared at the phone. The betrayal hit her harder than the sedative. Saul, her friend of 30 years, bought off. "Time's up," Henderson said, reaching for the phone. Evelyn didn't hand it back. She looked at the screen. A news alert popped up. "Breaking. Sterling Logistics sold to Tech Giant for $4.2 billion. Richard Sterling named new chairman." She wasn't just broke. She was erased. The elevator ride back up was silent. Evelyn leaned against the metal wall. The burner phone news alert burned into her retinas. They hadn't just put her in a home. They had dismantled her entire life in 24 hours. But as the elevator dinged on the main floor, something cold and hard settled in Evelyn's chest. Grief? No. Grief was for people who accepted loss. This was pure, distilled rage. "They think I'm incompetent," she whispered. "I'll show them incompetent." The doors opened. Nurse Grady was waiting. She held a syringe. "We missed you at bingo, Evelyn," Grady said, her voice dripping with menace. "And Henderson just radioed. He said you threatened him." "He's a liar," Evelyn said, stepping out. "It doesn't matter," Grady signaled. 2 orderlies grabbed Evelyn. "Dr. Moreland is very disappointed. He thinks you need some time in the quiet room to reflect on your behavior." The quiet room. Solitary confinement. They dragged her down the hall. Other residents looked away, fearful. They knew the drill. As they passed the administrative office, the door was ajar. Inside, Evelyn saw a television playing. It was a live interview. Richard was on screen, holding a glass of champagne, laughing. "It was my mother's dream to retire," Richard was saying to the reporter. "She always wanted to rest." Evelyn planted her feet. She stopped dead waiting, so the orderly stumbled. "Let me go," she roared, thrashing with a strength that surprised them. She managed to kick Grady in the shin. The big nurse yelped. Evelyn broke one arm free and grabbed a heavy vase from a hallway table. She didn't throw it. She smashed it against the wall, shattering it into jagged shards. "Stay back," she screamed, brandishing a glass shiv. "I want the police. I want a judge." "Subdue her," Grady shouted. The orderlies lunged. Evelyn slashed, catching one on the forearm. Blood sprayed. The alarms blared. Code black. Violent resident. It took 3 of them to pin her down. They slammed her face into the carpet. The needle pierced her hip this time. "You're going to regret that, you old witch," Grady hissed, pressing her knee into Evelyn's back. Evelyn's vision blurred. The drugs were stronger this time. Fast acting. "Richard," she mumbled into the carpet. "The safe." "What safe?" Grady paused, leaning down. "What did you say?" Evelyn fought the darkness. She needed to plant the seed. "The buried safe," Evelyn slurred, letting her eyes roll back. "He doesn't know the code." Grady looked at the orderlies. "Get her to the quiet room, strap her down, and call Dr. Moreland. Tell him she's talking about hidden assets." They dragged Evelyn away, her feet trailing on the floor. She let her body go limp, but her mind, fading fast, held onto one thought. She had just baited the trap. Now she had to survive long enough to spring it. The quiet room was padded, white, and soundproof. Evelyn was strapped to a bed with 5-point restraints. Leather cuffs held her wrists and ankles. A strap went across her chest. She had been there for 12 hours. No water, no food, just the hum of the air conditioner and the camera blinking in the corner. The drugs had worn off, leaving her with a splitting headache and a thirst that felt like sandpaper in her throat. She tested the restraints. Solid. No hairpin tricks would work here. The heavy steel door buzzed and clicked. It swung open. It wasn't Nurse Grady. It wasn't Dr. Moreland. It was Richard. He walked in, holding a handkerchief over his nose as if the room smelled of poverty. He looked immaculate, but his eyes were frantic. Caroline trailed behind him, looking nervous. "Mother," Richard said, standing over the bed. "You look terrible. You look expensive," Evelyn croaked. "The suit, custom?" "Cut the pleasantries," Richard snapped. "Moreland told me what you said. About a safe. A buried safe." Evelyn smiled. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. "I wondered how long it would take." "We sold the company, Mother," Caroline interjected, her voice high and shrill. "But the liquid cash. The accounts were empty. Where is the operating capital? There was supposed to be $50 million in the slush fund." "You checked the Cayman accounts?" Evelyn whispered. "Empty!" Richard yelled, losing his composure. "You moved it. You moved it before we took power of attorney. Where is it?" "I didn't trust you," Evelyn said softly. "I knew you were vultures, so I buried it. Not the money, the bearer bonds, gold, diamonds, everything liquid." "Where?" Richard grabbed the bed rail, shaking it. "Where did you bury it?" "I'll never tell you," Evelyn said, closing her eyes. "I'll die in this room before I give you a dime." "We can make your life hell," Richard screamed. "We can keep you here forever. We can up the drugs until you don't know your own name." "You can try." Evelyn opened her eyes. They were cold, hard flint. "But if you fry my brain, you lose the combination. It's a 40-digit code, Richard. Memorized. Written nowhere. You need me lucid. You need me alive. And you need me happy." Richard stared at her. He realized the checkmate. He had all the power, but she held the key to the treasure. "What do you want?" Richard asked through gritted teeth. "I want out of these straps," Evelyn said. "I want a steak dinner. Medium rare. And I want a meeting. Tomorrow morning? Here. With you, Caroline, Dr. Moreland, and a notary." "A notary?" Caroline asked. "Why?" "Because," Evelyn lied, "if you want the gold, we're going to renegotiate the terms of my surrender." Richard looked at Caroline. He looked at his mother. He saw the dollar signs. "Fine," Richard said. "Tomorrow morning. But if you're playing games, Mother, I will let Dr. Moreland turn you into a vegetable." They left the room. The door didn't lock this time. Nurse Grady entered a moment later and undid the straps. She threw a tray of cold food on the table and left without a word. Evelyn sat up, rubbing her raw wrists. She ate the food, regaining her strength. She didn't have a buried safe. She didn't have bearer bonds. The money was gone, moved into a charitable trust months ago that activated upon her incapacitation. They would find that out eventually. But she had bought herself time. And tomorrow, when they gathered in this room for the negotiation, she wasn't going to give them a code. She was going to take the facility down. She looked at the camera in the corner. She winked. Then she reached into her hair. The struggle in the hallway hadn't been just about fighting. When she had smashed the vase, she hadn't just grabbed a glass shiv. She had grabbed something else from the hallway table, something small and electronic that had fallen from the orderly's belt during the tussle. She pulled it out, a keycard. "Round 2, Evelyn whispered. The quiet room was no longer a cell. It was a staging ground. Evelyn sat on the edge of the bed, turning the stolen keycard over in her hands. It was a master access card. She recognized the red stripe. Orderlies carried them for emergencies. It would open every door in Silver Meadows, including the pharmacy, the exits, and Dr. Moreland's private office. But escaping wasn't enough. If she just ran, Richard would hunt her down with lawyers and police. He had the law on his side. She needed to destroy his leverage. She needed to expose the facility and prove her own competency. She checked the hallway. Empty. It was 3 a.m. The night shift was a skeleton crew, mostly sleeping or playing cards in the break room. Evelyn slipped out of the room, her bare feet silent on the cold tile. She didn't head for the exit. She headed for the resident wing. She went straight to room 302, Margaret's room. She swiped the card. The lock clicked green. Margaret was awake, knitting in the dark, the rhythm of her needles like a ticking clock. "I knew you weren't done," Margaret whispered without looking up. "I'm breaking out," Evelyn whispered. "And I'm taking down the house. Are you in?" Margaret put down her knitting. "I've been waiting 5 years for a jailbreak. What's the plan?" "I need a distraction," Evelyn said. "A big one. Something to pull every orderly to the west wing while I hit the east wing." Margaret grinned in the moonlight. "Room 305, Mr. Abernathy. He was a chemist before the dementia set in. He hoards cleaning supplies under his bed. Says he's building a rocket. Can he build a smoke bomb? Honey, he can build a bomb if you give him 10 minutes and a bottle of bleach." "Get him," Evelyn said. "And get the general. I need someone to jam the security cameras." "The general is in room 412, Margaret said, sliding out of bed. "But he's weak. They upped his dosage." "Wake him up," Evelyn said grimly. "Tonight, everybody fights." They split up. Evelyn moved through the shadows, heart pounding. She reached the administrative wing. Her target was Dr. Moreland's office. She needed the files. The real files. The ones that showed the illegal sedatives, the financial kickbacks from children like Richard, the false diagnoses. She swiped the card at Moreland's door. Access denied. She tried again. Access denied. "Damn it," she cursed. He changed the code. She looked at the keypad. It wasn't a card reader. It was biometric. A fingerprint scanner. She needed Moreland's finger. Or a copy of it. She remembered the intake procedure. They had taken her fingerprints on a glass scanner. They kept records. She ran to the nurse's station. It was empty, the nurse on duty having stepped away for a smoke break. Evelyn vaulted the counter stiffly, but successfully. She logged into the computer. It was password protected. She looked at the desk. A sticky note under the keyboard. Password. Admin 1234. Amateurs, she muttered, typing it in. She found the resident database. But she didn't look for her own file. She looked for Moreland's personnel file. There it was, including his biometric data upload for the state licensing board. She couldn't print a finger, but she could override the lock from the main system if she had admin rights. She clicked Unlock All Doors. System warning. This will release all containment locks. Confirm? Evelyn hovered over the Enter key. If she did this, she released the violent patients in Ward C chaos. "Do it," she whispered. She hit Enter. The sound of 50 electronic locks disengaging at once was a mechanical thud that vibrated through the building. Then the alarm started. Not the quiet, localized beeps. The full facility lockdown klaxons. Whoop. Whoop. Security breach. Evelyn sprinted for Moreland's office. The door was unlocked now. She burst in, grabbing the file cabinets. Locked. She grabbed a heavy brass statue from his desk, ironically. a statue of blind justice, and smashed the lock off the cabinet. She grabbed armfuls of files, financial records, patient charts with red stamps, non-compliant, liquidate assets. This was it, the smoking gun. She stuffed the files into a trash bag she found in the bin. Outside, the hallway erupted in noise. Shouting, running feet. "Hey, get back in your room!" an orderly screamed. Evelyn peeked out. It was pandemonium. Patients were wandering the halls. Some were confused, some were laughing. Mr. Abernathy came running down the hall wearing a colander on his head, throwing balloons filled with a bubbling, smoking liquid. Pop, hiss. Smoke filled the corridor. "Chemical warfare," Abernathy cackled. Evelyn ran into the smoke, clutching her bag of evidence. She needed to get to the basement boiler room, the exit tunnel. But as she turned the corner near the elevator, she ran smack into Nurse Grady. The giant woman grabbed Evelyn by the throat, lifting her off her feet. "I knew it was you," Grady snarled. "You little rat." Evelyn gagged, clawing at Grady's hand. The woman was immense, strong. "Drop the bag," Grady ordered, squeezing tighter. Evelyn kicked, her feet dangling. She couldn't breathe. Black spots danced in her eyes. Suddenly, a wheelchair slammed into the back of Grady's knees at full speed. Crunch. Grady roared in pain, her knees buckling. She dropped Evelyn. It was the general. He had wheeled himself into the fray, holding a fire extinguisher in his lap. "Fire in the hole," the general shouted. He triggered the extinguisher, blasting Grady in the face with white powder. Evelyn gasped for air, scrambling to her feet. "General, go!" the general yelled, reversing his chair to ram Grady again. "I'll hold the line. Get to the tunnel." Evelyn didn't want to leave him, but she had the proof. She ran for the stairs. She reached the basement. Henderson wasn't at his desk. The boiler room was empty. She ran to the back wall where the maintenance tunnel was supposed to be. It was boarded up. Thick, new plywood screwed into the frame. "No," Evelyn whispered. "No." She clawed at the wood. Solid. Behind her, the elevator dinged. Dr. Moreland stepped out. He held a taser. And behind him stood Richard. "Did you really think you could outsmart me, Mother?" Richard asked, shaking his head. "I designed the security upgrade." Evelyn backed up, against the boarded tunnel, clutching the trash bag of files to her chest. "It's over, Evelyn," Moreland said, raising the taser. "Give me the files." "You're a monster," Evelyn spat. "You're drugging people to steal their estates." "I'm providing a service," Moreland said calmly. "Families like yours, they don't want the burden. They want the money. I just facilitate the transaction." "Give it up, Mom," Richard said, looking at his watch. "It's 4 a.m. I have a flight to Cabo at noon. Don't make me miss it." Evelyn looked at her son. The boy she raised. The boy she sat up with when he had fevers. The man who was now selling her life for a beach house. "You're not my son," Evelyn said coldly. "You're a bad investment." She looked at the boiler behind them. It was old, rusted. The pressure gauge was in the red. "Richard," Evelyn said, her voice changing. "Do you remember what I taught you about leverage?" "What?" Richard frowned. "Leverage?" Evelyn said, inching toward. "The main steam valve. It's about knowing what the other person has to lose." "You have nothing," Richard shouted. "I have nothing to lose," Evelyn corrected. "But you? You have everything to lose." She grabbed the valve wheel. It was hot. It burned her hand. She ignored the pain. "Evelyn, stop." Moreland realized what she was doing. "That boiler is under 200 pounds per square inches. If you open that valve, you'll cook us all." "Then open the door," Evelyn demanded. "We can't," Richard yelled. "It's sealed. From the outside." "Liar!" Evelyn turned the wheel. Steam hissed violently from the release pipe. The room instantly grew hotter, foggier. "Crazy old bitch!" Moreland lunged. Evelyn spun the wheel hard. A jet of scalding steam shot out, blocking Moreland's path. He screamed, diving back. "The bag, Mom! Just give us the bag!" Richard pleaded, cowering behind a pillar. "I'm taking it with me," Evelyn shouted. She saw a floor grate near the boiler, a drainage grate. She couldn't fit. through it, but the bag could. She stuffed the trash bag through the bars of the grate. It dropped into the water below. "No!" Richard screamed. "It flows to the city sewer." Evelyn smiled through the steam. "Maybe a rat will find it. Or maybe the EPA." Moreland pulled a gun, a real gun. He aimed through the steam. "I'll kill you." Bang! The bullet sparked off the pipe next to Evelyn's head. Evelyn ducked. She was trapped. Steam blocking the front. A wall at her back. A gunman in front. Then, the plywood covering the tunnel entrance cracked. Something heavy hit it from the other side. Crash. An axe blade burst through the wood. "Stand back," a muffled voice shouted. Evelyn dove to the floor. The plywood shattered inward. Standing in the hole, holding a fire axe, was a man in a leather jacket. It was Saul, her lawyer. Saul stepped through the wreckage, coughing in the steam. Behind him were two large men who looked like bikers. "Saul?" Evelyn gasped. You betrayed me." "I stalled him," Saul shouted, grabbing Evelyn's arm. "I had to play along to find out where they took you. Richard blocked the GPS. I've been tracking the shell companies for 2 days." "You're fired!" Richard screamed, pointing at Saul. "I am the power of attorney." "Not anymore, kid," Saul yelled back. "I filed an emergency injunction an hour ago with Judge Reynolds. He signed it in his pajamas. The sale is frozen." Moreland raised his gun again. "I don't care about injunctions. No witnesses." One of the bikers stepped forward and threw a tire iron. It hit Moreland's hand with a sickening crunch. The gun flew into the boiler pit. "Let's go!" Saul dragged Evelyn into the tunnel. They ran. The tunnel was long, damp, and narrow. It led out to the parking lot of a nearby strip mall. They burst out into the cool night air. A black town car was waiting. "Get in," Saul ordered. Evelyn climbed in. She was shaking. Her hand was burned. Her gown was torn. "The files," she gasped. "I dropped them in the sewer." "We don't need the files to prove competency," Saul said, speeding away. "We just need you in a courtroom. Today, 9 a.m. "But the crimes," Evelyn said. "Moreland, the drugs, the financial theft. We'll get them," Saul promised. "But first, we have to keep you alive." They drove to a safe house, Saul's vacation cabin in the woods. Evelyn showered, dressed in clothes Saul's wife had brought, and drank a cup of strong coffee. She looked in the mirror. She looked old, tired. "No," she whispered. "Not today." She put on lipstick. She put on a blazer. She looked like the CEO she was. At 8:30 a.m., they drove to the courthouse. Reporters were already there. Richard had called a press conference, trying to spin the narrative. "My mother has been kidnapped by a disgruntled employee," Richard was telling the cameras. "She is mentally unstable. She needs medical attention." Saul's car screeched to a halt at the curb. Evelyn stepped out. The cameras turned. Flashbulbs popped. "Mrs. Sterling, is it true you escaped?" Evelyn walked up the steps. She stopped in front of Richard. Richard froze. "Mother, you're confused." Evelyn slapped him. The sound echoed across the plaza. It was a slap heard around the world. "I am not confused, Richard," Evelyn said into the microphones. "I am disappointed." She turned to the cameras. "My son tried to steal my life. Dr. Moreland is running a prison. And I am here to take back my company." She walked into the courthouse. The courtroom was packed. Judge Reynolds sat on the bench, looking stern. Richard sat with his expensive lawyers, looking pale. Moreland was nowhere to be found. He had fled the country an hour after the breakout. Saul stood up. "Your Honor, we move to immediately revoke the power of attorney and restore full rights to Evelyn Sterling." "Objection." Richard's lawyer stood up. "Mrs. Sterling is suffering from advanced dementia. The breakout last night proves she is a danger to herself. She assaulted staff. She destroyed property." "I was fighting for my life," Evelyn shouted from the plaintiff's table. "Mrs. Sterling, please," the judge warned. "Your Honor," Saul said, "we request a competency hearing. Right now. Test her." The judge looked at Evelyn. "Mrs. Sterling, are you prepared to answer questions regarding your estate?" "I am prepared to recite the quarterly earnings of my company for the last 40 years backward," Evelyn said steelily. For the next 2 hours, Evelyn put on a clinic. She detailed asset allocation, tax shelters, logistics mergers, and the current stock price of every competitor. She was sharper than the lawyers. She was sharper than the judge. By noon, the courtroom was silent in awe. "It is the opinion of this court," Judge Reynolds said, leaning forward, "that Evelyn Sterling is not only competent but likely the smartest person in this room." He banged the gavel. Power of attorney revoked. All assets restored. Restraining orders granted against Richard and Caroline Sterling. Richard put his head in his hands. Evelyn stood up. She walked over to Richard. "You're cut off," she said simply. "The accounts are closed. The cards are canceled. Get a job, Richard." She walked out of the courtroom. But it wasn't over. "The files," Evelyn said to Saul on the steps. "We need to find Moreland. We need to free the others. Margaret, the general." "The police are raiding Silver Meadows now," Saul said. "Based on your testimony." "I want to be there," Evelyn said. They drove back to Silver Meadows. Police cars surrounded the building. Residents were being led out into the sunlight, blinking, confused but free. Evelyn saw Margaret sitting on the grass, wrapped in a blanket. "Margaret!" Evelyn ran to her. "You did it?" Margaret wheezed, grinning. "You actually did it." "Where is the general?" Evelyn asked. Margaret's face fell. She pointed to a gurney being wheeled out by the coroner. "He held the line," Margaret whispered. "Grady." She threw him down the stairs. Evelyn stared at the body bag. Rage, cold and hard, filled her chest again. She saw Nurse Grady being handcuffed by police. She was shouting, claiming she was just following orders. Evelyn walked over to the police captain. "Did you find the files?" Evelyn asked. "No, ma'am," the captain said. "Moreland must have shredded them before he ran. We have no paper trail for the financial crimes. Just the abuse." "So he keeps the money?" Evelyn asked. "Likely," the captain sighed. "He's probably in a non-extradition country by now." Evelyn looked at the sewer grate in the parking lot, the one she had dropped the bag into. "Saul," Evelyn said, "call the city sanitation department. Tell them I want to buy a sewer section." "What?" "I dropped the evidence in the pipe," Evelyn said. "It didn't dissolve. It's plastic. It's stuck in the trap." 2 hours later, a city worker fished a dripping, sludge-covered trash bag out of the main line. Evelyn opened it. The papers were wet, smelly, but legible. Bank account numbers, shell corporations, Moreland's passport scans. "Gotcha," Evelyn whispered. She handed the bag to the police captain. "Find him. Here is batch 3 parts 1115 of the true story of a grandma left in a home by her greedy kids for her money." The quiet room was padded, white, and soundproof. Evelyn was strapped to a bed with 5-point restraints. She had been there for 12 hours. No water, no food. Just the hum of the air conditioner and the camera blinking in the corner. The drugs had worn off, leaving her with a splitting headache. She tested the restraints. Solid. The heavy steel door buzzed and clicked. It swung open. It was Richard. He walked in, holding a handkerchief over his nose. Caroline trailed behind him, looking nervous. "Mother," Richard said, standing over the bed. "You look terrible." "You look expensive," Evelyn croaked. "The suit custom?" "Cut the pleasantries," Richard snapped. "Moreland told me what you said. About a safe. A buried safe." Evelyn smiled. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. "I wondered how long it would take." "We sold the company, Mother," Caroline interjected, her voice high and shrill. "But the liquid cash! The accounts were empty. There was supposed to be $300 million in operating capital. Where is it?" Evelyn knew exactly where it was. Moreland had stolen it. He had drained the liquid accounts before she could lock them down. But Richard didn't know that. Richard thought she had hidden it. This was her leverage. "I didn't trust you," Evelyn lied softly, spinning the web. "I knew you were vultures, so I withdrew it. All of it. Gold, diamonds, bearer bonds. I buried it." "Where?" Richard grabbed the bed rail, shaking it. "Where did you bury it?" "I'll never tell you," Evelyn said, closing her eyes. "I'll die in this room before I give you a dime." "We can make your life hell," Richard screamed. "You can try," Evelyn opened her eyes. But if you fry my brain, you lose the combination. It's a 40-digit GPS coordinate, Richard. Memorized, written nowhere. You need me lucid. You need me alive. Richard stared at her. He realized the checkmate. What do you want? Richard asked through gritted teeth. I want out of these straps, Evelyn said. I want a steak dinner. And I want a meeting. Tomorrow morning. Here. With you, Caroline, and Dr. Moreland. We're going to renegotiate. Fine, Richard said. Tomorrow morning. They left the room. Nurse Grady entered and undid the straps, throwing a tray of food on the table. Evelyn sat up, rubbing her raw wrists. She ate the food. She didn't have a buried safe, but she knew Moreland had the money in crypto. She just needed to get out to prove it. She had bought herself time. She looked at the camera. She winked. Then she reached into her hair. During the struggle in the hallway, she hadn't just grabbed a glass shiv. She had swiped a keycard from the orderly's belt. Round 2, Evelyn whispered. The Gulfstream G650 sliced through the clouds above the Caribbean Sea. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Henderson was nervously eating shrimp cocktail. Margaret was soldering wires onto a remote-controlled drone, and Evelyn was staring out the window, the cryptic text message burning in her mind. The air. It had to be Richard. He was homeless, cut off, destitute. How could he be communicating with Moreland? Unless he had held back a secret stash of cash. Unless he was deeper in this than she ever imagined. We're beginning our descent into San Jose, the pilot announced. We're not landing in San Jose, Evelyn said into the intercom. Divert to the private airstrip in Le Mans. I paid the landing fee in cash. Copy that, Mrs. Sterling. They landed on a cracked runway cut into the edge of the rainforest. Heat and humidity slammed into them as the door opened. A waiting jeep, arranged by Saul's contacts, sat idling. Okay, team, Evelyn said, putting on oversized sunglasses. The objective is simple. Infiltrate the Casa de Oro. Henderson hacks the server to drain the crypto wallet. Margaret disables the security grid. I find Moreland. And then? Henderson asked, swatting a mosquito. We ask him nicely to come home, then we leave him for the local cartel he probably owes. Protection money, too, Evelyn said. Once the money is gone, his friends will turn on him. They drove for 2 hours into the dense jungle. The road turned from asphalt to dirt. They parked a mile from the compound and hiked the rest of the way through the underbrush. Margaret's all-terrain wheelchair hummed quietly over the roots. I'm picking up thermal signatures, she whispered, checking her screen. 2 guards at the gate, 3 on patrol, and a lot of heat from the main house. A party. They reached the ridge overlooking the villa. It was lit up like a Christmas tree. Music thumped through the jungle air. Expensive cars lined the driveway. He's hosting a gala, Evelyn realized. Arrogant bastard. This makes it easier, Henderson said. Crowds mean cover. Or more witnesses when we get shot, Margaret grumbled. Evelyn scanned the crowd through binoculars. She saw Moreland laughing on a balcony, holding a martini. He looked younger, tanned, carefree. Then, a man walked out onto the balcony to join him. He was thin, disheveled, wearing a suit that had seen better days. He looked desperate. Evelyn lowered the binoculars, her hand trembling. It was Richard. He wasn't just texting her. He was here. He's begging, Evelyn whispered. Look at his body language. He's pleading with Moreland. Or he's warning him, Henderson noted. Suddenly, Moreland laughed and patted Richard on the cheek, a humiliating, dismissive gesture. He signaled to the guards. 2 large men grabbed Richard and dragged him inside. They're not partners anymore, Evelyn said. Richard is a loose end. We have to move, Margaret said. I'm hacking the gate sensors now. The heavy iron gates of the compound clicked and swung open slightly. Henderson, get to the server room in the basement, Evelyn ordered. Margaret, stay here and fly the drone for Overwatch. I'm going to the party. You're walking in the front door? Henderson asked. You're a fugitive too? Him. Evelyn reached into her bag and pulled out a black wig and a glittering diamond masquerade mask. It's a costume party, Henderson, she said, checking her reflection in a compact mirror. And I'm dressed as Karma. She stepped out of the jungle and walked boldly toward the villa, cane clicking rhythmically on the pavement. But as she reached the front steps, A red laser dot appeared on her chest. "Hold it right there, Signora." A guard stepped out of the shadows, an assault rifle. "Ain't met her heart." "Invitation?" Evelyn didn't flinch. She stared down the barrel of the rifle through the eye holes of her diamond mask. "My invitation," Evelyn purred in flawless Spanish, "is in the fact that your boss owes me $300 million. She tapped her smartwatch. It was a bluff, but it worked. The guards patted her down, found the cash she planted, and let her in. She swept into the ballroom. It was a scene of decadent excess. "I'm in the server room," Henderson's voice whispered in her ear. "But it's biometric. Retinal scan. I need Moreland's eyeball." "Working on it," Evelyn replied. She found Moreland near the bar. She approached him, feigning frailty. "Dr. Moreland," she rasped. Moreland turned. "Do I know you?" "You knew my mother," Evelyn said, lifting the mask. Moreland dropped his glass. "Evelyn, I have a very good travel agent." Evelyn smiled, grabbing his wrist. "We're going downstairs, doctor." "Shut up," Moreland hissed. "Upstairs. Now." He led her to his private office, signaling 2 guards to follow. Inside the office, Moreland slammed the door. He pulled a gun from his desk. "You stupid old woman," Moreland sneered. He opened a closet door. Richard was tied to a chair inside, beaten and bloody. "Mom?" Richard wept. "I'm going to kill you both." Moreland aimed the gun. "Richard," Evelyn said calmly, "did you give him the codes?" "I had to," Richard sobbed. "Good," Evelyn said, "because that activates the tracker." "What tracker?" Moreland frowned. Evelyn looked at the window. Margaret now. Outside, Margaret sat in her wheelchair, piloting a high-speed racing drone. She wasn't carrying a package. She had strapped a block of C4 directly to the drone's chassis. It was a kamikaze run. She thumbed the joystick. Vroom. The drone screamed out of the sky, diving like a falcon. It smashed through the plate glass window of the office at 80 miles per hour. Crash boom. The drone detonated on impact. A blinding flash and a concussive blast rocked the room. The guards were thrown back. Moreland was knocked off his feet. Evelyn, who had shielded her eyes, was the first to move. Bang. The room filled with blinding white light and a deafening ringing sound. The guards screamed, clutching their eyes. Moreland fired blindly, the bullet burying itself in the ceiling. Evelyn didn't flinch. She had squeezed her eyes shut the moment she gave the code word. She swung her cane. The heavy ivory handle cracked Moreland's wrist. He dropped the gun. Evelyn kicked the gun under the sofa. She grabbed a letter opener from the desk and held it to Moreland's throat. "The retinal scan!" she shouted. "Henderson, are you ready?" "Ready." Evelyn dragged Moreland to his computer. She forced his face in front of the webcam. "Open your eyes!" she yelled, twisting his arm. The computer chimed. "Access granted." "Empty it," Evelyn ordered Henderson. "Transferring. It's going. It's going. Done. The wallet is zeroed out." "No!" Moreland screamed. "That's the cartel's money, too." "They'll kill me." "That's the point," Evelyn said. She shoved him away. She ran to Richard. She used the letter opener to slash his bonds. Richard fell forward, hugging her legs. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "Get up," Evelyn said coldly. "We're leaving." "The guards are waking up." Margaret's voice crackled in her ear. "And Evelyn, I have movement on the perimeter. A lot of movement. The local police are here, and they aren't here to help." The door to the office splintered. The guards outside were breaking in. "The balcony!" Evelyn grabbed Richard and dragged him to the shattered window. They climbed out onto the terrace. It was a 20-foot drop to the garden. "Jump," Evelyn ordered. "I can't. My leg is broken," Richard wailed. Evelyn looked at the trellis covered in vines. "Climb or die, Richard. It's a binary choice." She pushed him toward the vines and climbed over herself. She descended with surprising agility. Richard slid and fell the last 10 feet, landing with a groan in the bushes. Evelyn hauled him up. "Move!" They ran through the garden. Gunfire erupted from the balcony above. Bullets chewed up the fountain next to them. "To the jungle!" Evelyn pointed. They reached the tree line where Margaret and Henderson were waiting with the jeep. Get in! Henderson yelled, revving the engine. They piled in. Henderson gunned it, tearing down the dirt road. Behind them, 3 trucks with mounted machine guns peeled out of the compound gates. "We have company!" Margaret yelled from the back, holding her laptop like a shield. "Can we outrun them?" Richard cried, clutching his leg. "In a 1998 Jeep Wrangler?" Henderson laughed maniacally. "Against turbo diesel trucks? No chance." "Then we need to stop them," Evelyn said. "Margaret, the bridge." "What bridge?" "The wooden bridge we crossed a mile back," Evelyn said. "It has a load limit, and those trucks are armored." "They're too fast," Margaret yelled. "They'll cross it before it collapses." "Not if we blow it," Evelyn said. She reached into her clutch purse. She pulled out a small silver compact case. "Is that makeup?" Richard asked. "It's C4, Evelyn said. "Henderson gave it to me, just in case." "I did?" Henderson blinked. "Oh yeah, from the mining supply stash." "Henderson, slow down when we cross the bridge," Evelyn ordered. "I'm going to. Drop a present." They hit the rickety wooden bridge. Henderson braked hard. The Jeep skidded. Evelyn leaned out. She primed the small detonator and tossed the compact case onto the center span of the bridge. "Go, go, go!" Henderson floored it. The Jeep jumped off the bridge onto solid ground. The 3 Pershing trucks hit the bridge seconds later. Evelyn pressed the button. Boom! The center of the bridge disintegrated. The lead truck slammed on its brakes but skidded into the gap, tipping forward and plummeting into the ravine below. The other 2 trucks slammed into each other, blocking the road. "Ha!" Henderson cheered. "Grandma won Cartel 0!" They sped away into the night. "We're clear," Evelyn breathed, slumping back. "Not quite," Margaret said, looking at her screen. "Evelyn, the airport radar. Our plane just took off." "What?" "The pilot left," Margaret said. "He must have been paid off. Or scared off." Evelyn looked at the dark jungle surrounding them. They were stranded in a hostile country, with a corrupt government and a drug cartel hunting them, and their ride home was gone. "Pull over," Evelyn said. "Why?" "Because," Evelyn pointed to a clearing ahead, "we aren't the only ones watching Moreland." In the clearing sat a black helicopter. No markings. The rotors were spinning. Standing beside it was a man in a wheelchair. He was missing a leg. He wore an eye patch. "The general?" Evelyn gasped. Henderson slammed on the brakes. The Jeep skidded to a halt in the dust. Evelyn jumped out, ignoring her aching joints. She ran toward the helicopter. The general sat there, grinning, holding a cigar. He wasn't dead. He looked better than he ever had at Silver Meadows. "You look like you've seen a ghost, Evelyn," the general shouted over the rotor wash. "I saw you in a body bag," Evelyn yelled. "Grady threw you down the stairs." "I learned how to fall in the airborne," the general winked. "And Henderson gave me a shot of adrenaline to slow my heart rate. Played dead until the coroner's van hit a red light. Then I hopped out." You staged your death?" Margaret wheeled herself up, looking furious and impressed. "Had to," the general said, "to activate my assets. You didn't think I was just a senile old man, did you? I ran Black Ops in the 82nds. I have friends in low places." He pointed to the pilot, a man in a balaclava. "My team." "You tracked us?" Evelyn asked. "I tracked Moreland," the general spat. "He killed my friends. I came to finish the job. But I see you beat me to the punch on the money." "We drained him," Evelyn said. "But he's still alive back there." "Not for long," the general said darkly. "The cartel doesn't forgive failure, but we need to go. The airspace is closing." "Get in," Evelyn ordered her team. They loaded Richard, Margaret, and Henderson into the chopper. Evelyn climbed in last. As they lifted off, Evelyn looked down at the jungle. She saw the flames rising from the bridge. She saw the flashing lights of the police converging on the villa. She looked at Richard. He was huddled in the corner, shivering. "You saved me," Richard whispered. "After everything I did." "I didn't save you for your sake," Evelyn said coldly. "I saved you because I need a witness. You're going to testify against Moreland. You're going to expose the entire network. And then what?" "Then you're going to prison, Richard," Evelyn said. "For a long, long time." Richard slumped his head. He knew she meant it. The helicopter banked north. heading for international waters. So, the general shouted, passing Evelyn a flask. What's the next move, CEO? You got your money, you got your revenge. Evelyn took a swig. It was cheap whiskey, but it burned good. We got Moreland's money, Evelyn said, but we didn't get the list. The list? Margaret asked. The list of other victims, Evelyn said. Moreland mentioned families like yours. There are thousands of elderly people locked away in homes like Silver Meadows right now, stripped of their rights, drugged, robbed. She looked at her team. A hacker janitor, a wheelchair-bound engineer, a fake dead general, and herself, a corporate shark with a cane. We have $300 million in untraceable crypto, Evelyn said. And we have a stealth helicopter. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Henderson grinned. I'm saying I'm not ready to retire, Evelyn said. Sterling Logistics has a new division. What do we call it? The general asked. Evelyn looked out at the horizon, the sun rising over the ocean. The Silver Squad, Evelyn smiled. We break them out. We take the money back. We settle the score. Margaret revved her electric wheelchair motor. I'm in. Me too, Henderson said. The general puffed his cigar. Let's ride. Evelyn leaned back. She closed her eyes. She wasn't a victim anymore. She wasn't just a grandmother. She was the CEO of justice. And business was about to be booming. Here is batch 4 parts, 1620, of the true story of a grandma left in a home by her greedy kids for her money. 6 months had passed since the raid in Costa Rica. The Silver Squad had not been idle. Operating out of a decommissioned missile silo in Nevada, bought with Moreland's crypto fortune, Evelyn Sterling had turned her ragtag team into a precision instrument of geriatric justice. They had liberated 3 nursing homes in Arizona, exposed a corrupt probate judge in Florida, and Henderson had finally fixed his teeth. But one loose end remained, a thread that kept Evelyn awake at night. The Heir, the handle on the dark web, was still active, selling the financial profiles of wealthy seniors to predatory guardians. And the digital trail pointed to someone who knew Evelyn's business inside and out. Evelyn sat in the visitor's booth of the federal penitentiary. On the other side of the glass sat Richard. He looked thin, pale, and terrified. Prison had not been kind to a man whose idea of hardship used to be slow Wi-Fi. You look well, Mother, Richard stammered, avoiding her eyes. Have you come to get me out? I've come for information, Richard, Evelyn said, adjusting her silk scarf. The Heir. We tracked the IP address of the latest sale. It bounced through a server in the Swiss Alps. But the encryption key, it used your birthday. Richard flinched. It wasn't me! I swear, I'm in here! I know it wasn't you, Evelyn said coldly. You aren't smart enough. But someone is using your data. Who else had access to the family trust algorithms? Richard swallowed hard. Only you, me, and Caroline. Caroline? Evelyn frowned. Your sister cares more about Pilates than profit margins. She's a socialite, not a hacker. That's what she wanted you to think, Richard whispered, leaning closer to the glass. She was always jealous, Mom. You gave me the VP spot. She got a monthly allowance. She hated us both. When Moreland approached me, he didn't come to me first. He came to her. Evelyn felt a chill. Caroline. The daughter who checked her makeup while Evelyn was being dragged into Silver Meadows. Where is she, Richard? She's hosting a gala this weekend, Richard said. A moving gala. The Sunset Express. It's a luxury high-speed train running from Denver to Las Vegas. She told the press it's a charity event for Alzheimer's research. But it's not, Evelyn realized. No. Richard shook his head. It's an auction, a physical marketplace. She's bringing the highest value target seniors with liquid assets over $50 million on board, and she's invited the wolves to bid on their guardianship rights. A cattle auction, Evelyn whispered, disgusted. On wheels. The train is a fortress, Mom. Armored cars, private security, you can't stop it. Evelyn stood up. She placed her hand on the glass. Watch me, she said. She turned to leave. Mom, Richard called out. If you take her down, does that mean I get parole? Evelyn paused. She looked back at her son. No, Richard, but I'll put $5 in your commissary account. She walked out, The Silver Squad had a train to catch. The Sunset Express was a masterpiece of engineering, a chrome-plated bullet train designed for the super-rich. It sat idling at Union Station in Denver, steam hissing from its undercarriage. Red carpets were rolled out. Champagne was being served to the boarding guests, elderly billionaires in wheelchairs, looking confused, accompanied by nephews and doctors who gripped their arms a little too tightly. And watching from a maintenance van in the parking lot was the Silver Squad. "This isn't a nursing home," the general grumbled, looking at the schematics on Margaret's laptop. "This is a rolling bank vault, 12 cars, biometric locks. The guards are ex-special forces, and the train never stops until Vegas. We can't breach it. While it's moving," Henderson said, typing furiously, "and the manifest is locked. We don't know which car holds the auction. We have to be on board before it leaves," Evelyn said. She was applying spirit gum to her face, attaching a prosthetic nose. "We aren't on the guest list, boss," Margaret noted. "No," Evelyn said. "But the catering staff is." 20 minutes later, a catering truck pulled up to the service loading dock of the train. The driver, a hired local, was distracted by Henderson asking for directions to the nearest dispensary. While they talked, Evelyn, the general, and Margaret slipped into the back of the truck and hid inside 3 massive wheeled carts designated for dirty linens. It was a humiliating callback to their escape from Silver Meadows, but effective. The carts were wheeled onto the train by unsuspecting staff. They were shoved into the baggage car. The door slammed shut. The lock clicked. "Coast is clear," Margaret whispered, popping out of a pile of napkins. Evelyn climbed out, dusting off her waitress uniform. The general emerged, adjusting his fake mustache and waiter's jacket. Margaret, whose wheelchair couldn't fit in the cart, had been disassembled and packed in pieces. She spent the next 5 minutes reassembling her ride. The train lurched. The whistle blew. They were moving. "Okay," Evelyn said, checking her comms. "Henderson, are you in the van? I'm following on the parallel highway," Henderson's voice crackled in her earpiece. "I'll keep pace and jam their outgoing signals, but once you hit the canyons, you're on your own." "We need to find the auction car," Evelyn said. "Margaret, hack the internal surveillance. General, secure the engine room. I'm going to find Caroline." "You're going to the VIP lounge alone?" the general asked, loading a tranquilizer dart into a modified serving tray. "I'm not going as a guest," Evelyn said, picking up a tray of champagne flutes. "I'm going as the help." "Nobody looks at the help." She opened the baggage car door. The roar of the tracks was deafening for a second before she stepped into the plush silence of the hallway. Evelyn Sterling, billionaire CEO, walked down the corridor carrying drinks for the people stealing her generation's wealth. And she added a special ingredient to the glasses, a potent laxative Henderson had synthesized. "Let's start the party," she whispered. Car number 4 was the dining car, but car number 9, that was the prize. It was labeled Private Library. But as Evelyn approached, she saw 2 armed guards standing outside. She adjusted her wig and lowered her head. "Champagne for the guests?" she mumbled. "Not in there, Grandma," the guard grunted, blocking her path. "Clearance only. My manager insisted," Evelyn said, feigning a tremble. "If I don't deliver these, I'll be fired." The guard rolled his eyes. "Give it here." He reached for the tray. Evelyn dropped it. Glass shattered. Champagne exploded everywhere. "Oh no! I'm so clumsy!" Evelyn wailed, dropping to her knees to clean it up. "Stupid old bat!" the guard shouted, bending down to shove her away. As he bent down, Evelyn grabbed the taser from his belt with a sleight of hand she had practiced all week. She jammed it into his neck. Zap. The guard dropped silently. The second guard reached for his radio. "Breach in car." Thwip. A tranquilizer dart hit him in the neck. He slumped against the wall. The general stepped out of the shadows of the adjoining car, holding his serving tray, dart gun. "Room service." "Nice shot," Evelyn said. She dragged the bodies into a closet. She swiped the guard's keycard. The door to car 9 slid open. Inside, it wasn't a library. It was a high-tech trading floor. Monitors lined the walls, displaying biometric data and bank balances. In the center of the room, 20 wealthy buyers sat in plush chairs, holding digital paddles. At the front of the room stood Caroline. She looked radiant in a red dress, holding a gavel. Beside her stood an old man, Mr. Rothstein, a steel magnate Evelyn had known for decades. He looked drugged, confused. Lot 4, Caroline announced into a microphone. Mr. Rothstein, assets totaling 80 million. Recent stroke, limited speech, perfect candidate for full conservatorship. Bidding starts at 5 million. 6 million? A man in the back shouted. 7. Evelyn's stomach turned. They were selling his life. 10 millions, Caroline pointed. Going once. 50 million, a voice said from the doorway. The room went silent. Caroline froze. She looked up. Evelyn stepped into the light. She ripped off her wig. She wiped off the prosthetic nose. 50 million, Evelyn said, her voice steel. To buy his freedom, and yours, Caroline. Caroline stared at her mother. She didn't look scared. She smiled. Mother, Caroline sighed. I knew Richard would sing, but you're too late. The transaction is already blockchain verified. Cancel it, Evelyn ordered, raising the stolen taser. Or what? Caroline laughed. You'll tase me? Look around, Mom. The buyers stood up. They weren't just businessmen. They drew weapons from their jackets. It's a trap, the general whispered behind Evelyn. Of course it is, Caroline smirked. I knew you were coming. Why do you think I chose a train? There's no exit, Mother. Welcome to your retirement party. Get them, Caroline ordered. The room erupted. The buyers turned mercenaries surged forward. General, flash, Evelyn shouted. The general threw a flashbang tray. Bang. Move. Evelyn pushed the general back into the hallway and locked the door. They're locked in, the general said. But not for long. Where is Margaret? I'm in the engine room, Margaret's voice crackled. Caroline locked the brakes. We're picking up speed. She's going to derail us. We need to detach the cars, the general said. They ran toward the rear of the train. They reached the coupling between car 8 and car 9, the auction car. The wind roared. I'll do it, the general said. He stepped out onto the small metal platform. The pin is rusted. The door to car 9 burst open. A mercenary leaned out, aiming a gun. Evelyn grabbed a heavy brass fire hose nozzle from the wall. She stepped out. Hey! She swung the heavy nozzle, smashing it into the mercenary's face. He fell off the train. Hurry, General. I can't move it, the general shouted, kicking the pin. It's jammed! More mercenaries appeared. Caroline was behind them. Shoot them! Move! Evelyn shouted. She didn't use the taser. She raised the heavy brass nozzle like a hammer. She looked at the rusted iron pin holding the cars together. She thought of her company. She thought of her freedom. She swung with all the strength of a woman who had built an empire from nothing. Clang. The brass nozzle struck the pin perfectly. The rust shattered. The pin flew out. The coupling disengaged. Car 9 detached from car 8. Caroline stared at Evelyn across the widening gap, her mouth open in shock. Mother! She screamed. The rear cars began to slow down. The front cars sped away. Gravity, Evelyn said, tossing the nozzle aside. It works every time. You are terrifying, the general panted. We're safe, Evelyn breathed. Evelyn? Margaret's voice crackled. We're not safe. The tracks ahead are rigged. We are a runaway train heading for a bin-day cliff. Evelyn stared out the window. The landscape was rushing by at 120 miles per hour. They were entering the canyon lands. The bridge at Dead Man's Gorge was 5 miles away. At this speed, they had 3 minutes. Margaret! Evelyn shouted into the comms. Can you hack the track switch remotely? Negative, Margaret yelled. The signal is jammed locally. Someone has to manually throw the switch on the trackside. Henderson, Evelyn called. Where are you? I'm on the parallel. Highway! Henderson screamed over the roar of his van's engine. I see you. You're going too fast. Henderson, Evelyn said calmly. How close is the highway to the track switch? It crosses under the tracks about a mile before the bridge. Why? You need to get to that switch box, Evelyn said. You need to throw it manually. I'm a janitor, not a stuntman, Henderson cried. And I'm in a surveillance van. You're a member of the Silver Squad, Evelyn said. And I'm giving you a Bonus, 5 million. Do it! 5 million? The engine of the van roared louder. Hold my Red Bull! On the train, Evelyn and the general, now recovering, ran to the engine room. Margaret was there, frantically typing. I can't stop it, Margaret cried. The software is locked. Forget the software, Evelyn said. We use physics. She looked at the cargo. The dirty linen carts were still there. General, Evelyn said, if we create enough drag, can we slow it down so we don't fly off? The curve even if the switch is thrown. We need a parachute, the general said. Evelyn grabbed a pile of tablecloths from the laundry cart. Start tying. They tied the heavy linen tablecloths together, creating a massive, makeshift streamer. Open the side doors. They threw the cloth out. It caught the wind. It wasn't a parachute, but it flapped violently, creating drag. The train shuddered. It slowed, slightly. 115 miles per hour. It's not enough, Margaret yelled. We're coming up on the switch. Outside, Henderson pushed his van to the limit. He swerved off the highway, crashing through a fence, bouncing over the rough terrain toward the railroad junction box. I'm almost there, Henderson shouted. But there's a lock on the box. Ram it, Evelyn screamed. Henderson didn't hesitate. He drove the van straight into the steel control box. Crash. The van crumpled. The box shattered. Henderson crawled out of the wreckage, bleeding. He saw the manual lever. It was bent but accessible. He grabbed it. The ground rumbled. The train was coming, a silver bullet bearing down on him. For the money, Henderson yelled. He pulled the lever. Clack-thud. The tracks shifted seconds before the train hit the junction. The train lurched violently to the right, diverting away from the incomplete bridge spur and onto the main line. Inside, Evelyn, Margaret, and the general were thrown to the floor. The train banked around the curve, wheels screeching, sparks flying high into the air. It tilted dangerously, almost tipping over, before slamming back down onto the rails. They sped across the bridge, safe. The train coasted for another 10 miles before running out of momentum on an uphill grade. It came to a stop in the middle of the desert silence. Evelyn stood up, bruising all over. She walked to the door and opened it. The silence was beautiful. We made it, Margaret whispered. Evelyn looked back down the track. Miles away, she saw police lights swarming. The stranded rear cars where Caroline was trapped. We got her, Evelyn said. But as she stepped off the train onto the sand, her phone buzzed. She pulled it out. It wasn't Henderson. It wasn't Richard. It was a text from an unknown number. Well played, Mother. You won the battle. But you forgot one thing. The auction wasn't for the seniors. The auction was for the data. I uploaded the master list to the cloud 5 minutes ago. Every predator in the world now has the names and addresses of every wealthy senior in America. The game isn't over. It just went global. Evelyn stared at the phone. She dropped it in the sand and crushed it with her heel. General, she said. Margaret, get Henderson. Where are we going? The general asked, nursing his tased leg. Evelyn looked at the horizon. Global, she said. We're going global. The desert wind whipped Evelyn's hair as the Silver Squad regrouped around the wreckage of Henderson's surveillance van. Henderson was bruised and bleeding from a cut on his forehead, but he was grinning, clutching the severed lever of the track switch like a trophy. We saved the passengers, Margaret said, checking her laptop, which sat on the hood of the Jeep. But we lost the war. The upload is at 15%. It's a massive file, terabytes of data. Financial records, medical histories, power of attorney loopholes for every high net worth senior in the Western Hemisphere. Where is it going? Evelyn asked, cleaning the sand from her. Kane. It's being distributed to a decentralized server network, Margaret explained grimly. The Hydra. Once it hits 100%, it copies itself to thousands of servers worldwide. We won't be able to scrub it. Every scammer, identity thief, and corrupt guardian will have a shopping list of victims. How long until 100%? The general asked. Based on the upload speed, 12 hours. Margaret calculated. Evelyn looked at the horizon. We can't hack a decentralized network. We have to cut the head off the hydra before it multiplies. The source server, Henderson realized. Caroline uploaded it from the train, but the train's Wi-Fi isn't strong enough for that volume. She must have bounced it to a relay station. A master server. Trace it, Evelyn ordered. Margaret typed furiously. Tracing. Hopping through Singapore. London. Got it. The signal terminates in a data center in Iceland. The Citadel. It's a subterranean server farm powered by geothermal energy. It's supposed to be impenetrable. Impenetrable is just a word for expensive to break, Evelyn said. It's guarded by a private military corporation, the general noted, looking at the satellite imagery Margaret pulled up. And it's underground. We can't fly a helicopter in there. Then we walk in, Evelyn said. Walk in? Henderson scoffed. To a fortress? The Citadel isn't just a server farm. Evelyn pointed to the screen. It fronts as a secure storage facility for biological samples. Seeds, DNA. They offer tours to high-level donors. And who is a higher-level donor than Evelyn Sterling? The general smiled. We need a jet, Evelyn said, pulling out her satellite phone. And we need winter coats. We're going to Iceland. What about Richard? Henderson asked. He's still in prison. Richard helped build Caroline's encryption, Evelyn said. If we're going to wipe that server, we need the kill code. I need to make one last call to my son. The jet touched down in Reykjavik 6 hours later. The air was biting cold, a stark contrast to the Nevada desert. The Silver Squad sat in the back of a rented Land Rover, dressed in heavy parkas. Evelyn held the phone to her ear. She had pulled strings to get an emergency line to the warden's office where Richard was being held. Mom? Richard's voice was small, trembling. I saw the news about the train. Did you get her? We stopped the train, Richard. But Caroline uploaded the list. It's sitting on a server in Iceland, waiting to go global. The Citadel, Richard whispered. She talked about that. She said it was the iron box. I need to open the box, Richard. I need the root admin password for the database she built. Richard hesitated. Mom, if I give you that, I'm implicating myself in a federal cybercrime. They'll add 10 years to my sentence. Evelyn looked out the window at the bleak, frozen landscape. Richard, if you don't give it to me, thousands of people, grandmothers, grandfathers, veterans will lose everything. Just like I almost did. You can be a coward, or you can be a Sterling. Silence on the line. For a long moment, Evelyn thought he had hung up. It's not a password, Richard said softly. It's a phrase, a biometric voice key. She recorded it. You have to say it. What is the phrase? It's, Mother knows best. Evelyn closed her eyes. Even in her villainy, Caroline was petty. Thank you, Richard. Mom? Yes? I'm sorry I put you in that home. I know, Evelyn said. Goodbye, Richard. She hung up. We have the key, Evelyn told the team. Now we just need to get to the terminal. The Citadel was built into the side of a volcano. Steam rose from vents in the snow. It looked like a Bond villain's lair. We have an appointment, Evelyn said, adjusting her fur coat. Margaret, you're my assistant. General, you're my security. Henderson, you're the driver. Keep the engine running. I always get the boring jobs. Henderson muttered. They approached the massive steel blast doors. A guard in gray camouflage stepped out. Mrs. Sterling, the guard said, checking a clipboard. You are early for your tour. Punctuality is for people who don't own planes, Evelyn snapped. Open the gate. I want to see where my money is going. The guard hesitated, scanning them. Surrender your weapons. The general handed over his pistol. Evelyn handed over her cane. And the wheelchair? The guard asked, looking at Margaret. It's a medical device, Evelyn said haughtily. Unless you plan to carry her? The guard waved them through. He didn't know that the wheelchair frame was packed with C4 plastic explosives. The interior of the Citadel was a cathedral of technology. Rows of blinking server racks stretched into the darkness, cooled by the hum of massive fans circulating the freezing outside air. The tour guide, a nervous man named Sven, led them onto a glass bridge overlooking the server floor. This is the main array, Sven gestured. Data from the world's most elite clients is stored here. Triple redundancy, nuclear proof. Impressive, Evelyn said, scanning the room. Where is the primary uplink terminal? The control room is restricted, Sven smiled apologetically. Even for donors. General, Evelyn said calmly. The general moved. Despite his age and missing leg, he struck Sven in the throat with a chopped hand strike. Sven collapsed silently. Margaret, locate the target, Evelyn ordered. Margaret plugged her laptop into the bridge's maintenance port. Okay, I'm tracking the upload. It's at 85%. It's housed in Sector 4. The black box rack, that isolated unit over there. She pointed to a black monolith of a server surrounded by a laser grid. We can't hack that remotely, Margaret said. You have to physically type the voice key into the console inside the grid. Then, let's go downstairs, Evelyn said. They ran to the elevator. The general used Sven's keycard. They descended to the server floor. The air was freezing, kept at sub-zero temperatures to cool the machines. Evelyn shivered in her fur. They reached Sector 4. The laser grid hummed menacingly. I can disable the lasers for 10 seconds, Margaret said, her fingers flying across the keys. But that triggers the silent alarm. Mercenaries will be here in 30 seconds. 10 seconds is all I need, Evelyn said. Ready? Margaret asked. Mark. The lasers vanished. Evelyn sprinted or moved as fast as a 78-year-old in heels could toward the console. She reached the keyboard. A microphone icon flashed on the screen. Voice authentication required. Mother knows best. Evelyn spoke clearly into the mic. Access granted. Yes, Evelyn cheered. She typed the command, delete all, purge archives. Warning. System override detected. Hardware lock engaged. The screen flashed red. Cannot delete. Manual eject required. What does that mean? Evelyn shouted. It means Caroline put a hardware failsafe, Margaret yelled from the perimeter. You have to pull the physical hard drives out of the machine while it's running. It will fry the system. Do it, the general shouted. Company coming! The elevator doors at the far end of the room pinged open. A squad of armed guards poured out. Intruders in Sector 4. Open fire. Bullets sparked off the server racks, sending showers of sparks and glass flying. The general flipped a table for cover, returning fire with a pistol he had taken from Sven. Cover me, Evelyn shouted. She grabbed the handle of the main hard drive bay on the black server. It was locked. Margaret, the explosive, Evelyn yelled. Margaret wheeled herself out from cover, zigzagging to avoid the bullets. She ripped a chunk of C4 putty from her wheelchair armrest, slapped a detonator on it, and tossed it to Evelyn. Evelyn caught it. She jammed the putty into the lock of the drive bay. Fire in. The hole! Evelyn dove behind the server rack. Boom. The door to the drive bay blew off. Smoke poured out. Evelyn reached into the smoke. The drives were hot, burning hot. She wrapped her scarf around her hands and grabbed the handle of the master drive. Pull! She gritted her teeth. It was stuck. The heat had warped the metal. They're flanking us, the general shouted. He was out of ammo. He threw the empty gun at a guard and picked up a fire extinguisher. Evelyn put her foot against the server chassis. She pulled with every ounce of strength she had left. She thought of the nursing home. She thought of the cold food, the lonely rooms, the theft of dignity. Not today, she roared. With a screech of tearing metal, the drive ripped free. Sparks exploded from the empty slot. The server whined and died. On the screens above, the upload bar froze at 99%. Then it turned black. Connection lost. It's done, Evelyn screamed, holding the smoking drive. Great, the general yelled. Now we just have to survive. The guards were closing in. There were too many of them. Henderson, Evelyn shouted into her earpiece. Now! From the ceiling vents above, a hose dropped down. Henderson had climbed into the ventilation system from the roof. Eat soup, Henderson yelled. He turned a valve. High pressure, boiling hot fluid sprayed from the hose onto the guards. It wasn't water. It was the geothermal coolant Henderson had diverted from the main pipes. The guards screamed as the steam blinded them and burned their skin. They retreated, falling back to the elevators. The ladder, Henderson shouted, lowering a rope ladder through the vent. Climb! I can't climb that, Evelyn yelled. The winch! Henderson pressed a button. The ladder was motorized. Evelyn hooked her arm through the rung. She grabbed Margaret. The general grabbed the bottom rung. Go up, the winch groaned, lifting the three of them into the air just as the guards recovered and opened fire again. Bullets whizzed past their feet. They were pulled up into the ventilation shaft, disappearing into the steam. They crawled through the ducts, emerging onto the snowy roof of the Citadel where the Land Rover was waiting. Except the Land Rover was gone. In its place was a snowcat, a massive tracked vehicle. I upgraded. Henderson grinned from the driver's seat. They piled in. As they drove away down the mountain, Evelyn looked at the smoking hard drive in her lap. She opened the window and threw it into a volcanic steam vent. It melted instantly. The list is gone, Evelyn whispered. They're safe. 1 year later, the ribbon-cutting ceremony was attended by the governor, the mayor, and every news outlet in the state. The building was magnificent. A sprawling estate with gardens, a library, a 5-star restaurant, and a legal aid clinic. The sign above the door read, "The Sterling Sanctuary." Evelyn stood at the podium. She looked vibrant, powerful. For too long, Evelyn spoke into the microphone. We have treated our elders as burdens. We stored them away like old furniture. But wisdom is not a burden. It is a resource. The crowd cheered. Sitting in the front row was the general, wearing a new suit and a prosthetic leg that looked like it belonged to a Terminator. Next to him was Margaret, the head of IT security for the facility. Henderson, the head of maintenance and unofficial candy smuggler, stood by the door in a tux. This facility is free, Evelyn announced, funded by the assets recovered from the criminals who preyed on us. Here, you keep your dignity, you keep your freedom, and you keep your money. Cameras flashed. After the ceremony, Evelyn retired to her office on the top floor. It wasn't a cold, sterile room. It was warm, filled with photos of the people she had helped. There was a knock on the door. Saul walked in. He looked tired but happy. You saw the news? Saul asked. About Caroline? She took a plea deal, Saul said. 20 years. Richard is up for parole in 5. He sent you a letter. Saul placed an envelope on the desk. Evelyn looked at it. She didn't open it. She put it in her drawer. Maybe later, she said. There's one more thing, Saul said. We got a tip. A new operation starting up in Florida. Someone buying up retirement condos and forcing the residents into predatory reverse mortgages. Evelyn's eyes lit up. She spun her chair around. Is that so? She opened a hidden panel in her desk. Inside were 4 headsets, a stack of burner phones, and a new cane with a taser built into the handle. Margaret, Evelyn shouted into the intercom. Get the jet ready. General, pack your bags. Henderson, find me a map of Miami. We going to Florida, boss? Margaret's voice crackled back, sounding excited. We're going to Florida. Evelyn smiled. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the sanctuary she had built. She wasn't just a grandmother anymore. She was a guardian. Greed never sleeps, Evelyn whispered, grabbing her cane. And neither does Grandma.